What if one of the most mysterious disappearances in American housing history is sitting right in front of us, and we've all been walking past it without even realizing it? Because hidden quietly inside ordinary neighborhoods across this country are houses that were never built by contractors, never designed in fancy architect studios, and never arrived as complete structures. They arrived in boxes, on trains, piece by piece, like Lego for adults, over 100 years ago. And yet somehow, the company that invented this system became forgotten, even though tens of thousands of their homes still exist today. So what exactly happened to them? And is it possible the house you drove past this morning was once delivered like furniture from the Sears catalog? Today, we uncover the rise, domination, and sudden disappearance of Sears Modern Homes. At the start of the 20th century, America was reshaping itself at a speed the world had never seen before. Millions of families were moving across states, chasing factory work, steel work, rail work, textile work, anything that promised stability and survival. Entire towns were rising almost overnight. Dirt roads, lumber yards, freight trains chugging through industrial corridors. These were not background details. This was America in motion, and in this turbulent environment, the idea of home meant something different than it does today. A house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the symbol that a family had finally arrived, that they were no longer drifting from place to place, no longer just surviving, but finally anchoring themselves into the soil of a new community. Owning a house wasn't luxury, it was identity. It was belonging. It was proof of progress. But there was a problem. Building a house the normal way was painfully slow, extremely expensive, and out of reach for most working families. Materials were inconsistent. Builders were unpredictable. Projects dragged for months. The word home was far more dream than reality for the average American laborer. And yet, something else was happening quietly in parallel. Americans were already extremely comfortable buying everything else through the mail. Pocket watches, coats, sewing machines, tools, even entire furniture sets, all ordered from thick printed catalogs and delivered by train. This habit, this trust, this familiarity with mail order was already deeply wired into daily American life, which meant the stage was perfectly set for a radical new idea to enter. If they could order everything else by mail, why not their house? The spark didn't begin as a wild fantasy. It began with something America already trusted, Sears itself. Sears wasn't just a store back then. Sears was a household ritual. Their catalogs sat on kitchen tables, in dresser drawers, on nightstands beside oil lamps. People circled items, tore pages, shared them with neighbors, and waited for train deliveries like small celebrations. So when Sears introduced the concept of selling entire homes, not furniture, not lumber, but a complete house as a kit, it wasn't seen as insane. It was seen as the next logical step. In 1908, the very first Sears Modern Homes catalog was printed. Inside those pages weren't just blueprints and prices. They were dreams with floor plans. Sears offered homes with exacting measurements, precise material lists, and step-by-step building instructions, all bundled into standardized packages that could be shipped anywhere a railroad line reached. And that detail matters. Rail was the lifeblood of the nation at that time. Coal, iron, timber, factory goods, everything moved by train, which meant thousands of new communities already lived within arm's reach of rail stations that could now deliver something far more personal. Their future home. Sears didn't just sell materials. They sold confidence. They took the mystery out of construction. They took the risk out of hiring builders. They allowed ordinary working families, people who had never built anything larger than a shed, to look at a catalog, send an order, and assemble their own permanent foundation in just weeks instead of months. This wasn't just a new business model. It was a direct disruption of American home building itself, and it would shape the next 3 decades in ways no one in 1908 could yet imagine. Once the first few Sears homes were built successfully, the momentum didn't grow slowly. It spread like wildfire. Because Sears wasn't just offering cheaper construction, they were offering predictability in a world where unpredictability was normal. Every beam was pre-cut, every piece of lumber was marked, Every nail, every hinge, every window frame was accounted for. Families didn't have to gamble on local builders, unpredictable costs, or half-finished promises. They could finally trust what they were getting. Sears removed the unknown and replaced it with certainty. And that certainty was powerful. Even more importantly, this wasn't a lonely experience. When a Sears house arrived by train, neighbors noticed. They stepped in. They helped lift frames, align beams, hold ladders, and raise porches. This wasn't just construction, it was community bonding. A house wasn't simply something you received, it was something you physically built with the people around you. And because of that, a completed Sears home instantly became living proof. Proof that an ordinary working-class family could achieve something once only reserved for the wealthy. No advertising campaign could compete with that. A single finished Sears porch in one neighborhood automatically led to 2 more orders, then 4, then 6. Sears didn't need to sell the idea. The houses themselves did it. They stood there like billboards made of wood, except real families lived inside them. The combination of low price, speed, trust in the Sears name, and a nation already accustomed to mail-order culture created a perfect storm. And for the first time in American history, the dream of home ownership became mass accessible, not just for the upper class, but for the factory worker, the mechanic, the carpenter, the railroad man, the immigrant father trying to plant his roots. That is why Sears Modern Homes didn't just grow, they exploded. As orders increased, Sears Modern Homes entered a period that could only be described as its golden era. This wasn't a niche experiment anymore. This was a nationwide shift happening quietly, one parcel car at a time. Sears catalogs transformed into something far bigger than a shopping book. They became a menu of possible futures. Inside those pages, families could choose a home that reflected who they were and who they wanted to become. Not everyone wanted the same house, and Sears understood that. So the catalog expanded from a few dozen models to hundreds, from small, simple working-class designs to elegant multi-room homes to near mansion-level builds. Each model had a name, not a number: Crescent, Dover, Cornell, Davenport. These weren't just products. These were identities, personalities, aspirations printed on paper, and that level of choice changed everything. Buyers could customize roof types, choose porch styles, select interior layouts, add fireplaces, decide the number of rooms, and order optional cabinet sets. These homes weren't merely affordable, they were beautiful, clear, defined, and far more reliable than the uncertain craftsmanship of random contractors. Banks began approving more loans for Sears homes because the data was clear. These houses actually held value. They were consistent, durable, standardized. That meant safer mortgages, safer investments, safer futures. Many of these neighborhoods, especially across the Midwest and East Coast, turned into living catalog displays. You could walk down a single street and see multiple Sears designs standing side by side, like a carefully arranged architectural showroom, except built by the very families living inside them. This chapter was the height of belief in American self-made capability. Children grew up remembering the hammering sounds of their parents and neighbors raising walls. They watched homes rise from flat piles of lumber into real spaces where birthdays, meals, and memories would happen for generations. In this era, America wholeheartedly believed that the future wasn't something you waited for. It was something you built with your own hands. To truly understand why Sears Modern Homes became more than just a trend, we have to look deeper than price, materials, or convenience. This movement tapped directly into the psychology of the American identity itself. First, practical necessity. The working class did not have dependable access to trustworthy builders. Construction was unpredictable, expensive, and risky. Sears eliminated the fear. They offered clarity. They offered exact costs. They offered instructions that turned chaos into a sequence. A Sears kit wasn't just affordable, it removed uncertainty. Second, self-reliance. This was not a generation that waited for someone else to solve their problems. These were people who fixed their own tools, repaired their own wagons, built their own barns, dug their own wells. The idea of building their own home was not intimidating. It actually aligned perfectly with how they already lived. Sears simply took the raw burden of complexity and turned it into manageable steps anyone could follow. And third, community culture. Back then, building was a shared experience. When one family ordered a Sears home, neighbors came. They offered hands, muscle, ladders, advice, and encouragement, fully expecting that same help when it was their turn next. Home building wasn't a private transaction. It was a social ritual. A house raising wasn't just construction. It was proof that a neighborhood trusted one another. And this psychological cocktail, necessity, independence, and community, is what made Sears houses unforgettable. These homes lasted over a century not because they were magical or high-tech, but because they were built with precision and human ownership. These were houses built by people who physically touched every board, every nail, every beam. They remembered every day of construction because they lived through it. They weren't just living in a home. They were living inside something they created. That emotional investment is something modern mass-produced housing simply cannot replicate. But like every great American story, this one did not end at the top. Sears Modern Homes didn't disappear because the product failed. They vanished because the world around them changed faster than they could adapt. The first major blow was the Great Depression in 1929. When the economy collapsed, millions of people lost their jobs. Banks closed, families defaulted, and because Sears wasn't just selling homes, it was also lending money to buyers. Sears suddenly became the owner of massive unpaid debt. By 1934, Sears was forced to liquidate millions of dollars in mortgages. The model that once worked perfectly under a stable economy became almost impossible to sustain. Then came the next disaster, World War II. Material scarcity hit the nation hard. Lumber, steel, glass, nails, and countless components needed for Sears homes were redirected to military use. Even if people wanted to buy a mail-order home, Sears could not reliably secure the materials to produce them. The pipeline simply dried up, and just when the war ended, and one might assume there would be a comeback, the final shift happened. America's dream changed form. Large developers like Levittown began creating entire pre-built suburban communities, complete with roads, schools, parks, plumbing systems, electricity grids, the full lifestyle package. The new post-war American family didn't want to build. They wanted to move in immediately. They wanted convenience. They wanted turnkey living. They wanted fast comfort, not slow creation. The cultural identity of home ownership had transitioned from do-it-yourself to ready when you arrive. Sears never failed because the houses didn't work. They failed because the dream evolved. And by 1942, the Sears Modern Homes program was officially shut down. It was not one cause, but a collision of economic collapse, wartime restriction, and a complete psychological shift in what America believed home ownership should feel like. Even though Sears stopped selling these homes more than 80 years ago, the story did not simply fade away. The business closed, but the houses themselves never disappeared. They still exist, quietly blended into neighborhoods all over America, hiding in plain sight. Tens of thousands were originally sold, and a surprisingly large number of them still stand today, still solid, still lived in, still part of daily life. The most fascinating part, most people have no idea they're even living in one. These houses look like ordinary historic homes. Wide porches, symmetrical windows, pitched roofs, brick chimneys. There's nothing labeled, no logo, no badge that says Sears. From the street, you would never suspect that a century ago those walls arrived in a train car, unloaded piece by piece, and assembled by neighbors in a single summer. Sears did not maintain a national registry. There is no official master map, no database of where each kit home ended up. Once the house was built, Sears stepped out of the story. Which means today, identifying authentic Sears houses has turned into a kind of historical detective work. A small but passionate group of researchers around the country has spent years tracking them down, searching archives, old blueprints, mortgage records, and even looking for stamped lumber markings hidden in basements and attics. Every verified Sears home becomes like a recovered artifact, proof of an era when ordinary Americans built their dreams with their own hands. In some cities, the concentration is enormous. In other towns, just a few remain scattered like forgotten relics. But every surviving Sears house is a physical time capsule, a piece of American history that didn't end. It simply blended into everyday life. The legacy still stands, silently reminding us of what was once possible. When we look back today, Sears Modern Homes represent far more than a discontinued product line. They represent an entire value system, a philosophy that once defined the American character itself. These houses embodied self-reliance, patience, thrift, and the belief that your own two hands could shape your future. At a time when ownership was something only the wealthy could afford, Sears took the most sacred symbol of stability, a home, and placed it within reach of ordinary working families, for immigrants, for factory workers, for young couples trying to start a life, for people who had nothing but determination. Sears standardized materials, removed complexity, and democratized the dream. They proved that you didn't need elite architects or massive wealth to have a permanent place in this country. You needed commitment, you needed blueprint logic, you needed the willingness to build. And these houses were built with more than wood and nails. They were built with neighbors helping neighbors, with fathers teaching sons, with families turning bare frames into living rooms where memories would be created for decades. It wasn't simply construction. It was participation in a shared belief that the American future wasn't purchased. It was created. What makes this story powerful is that Sears homes didn't vanish because they were flawed. They vanished because society changed. Convenience replaced craftsmanship. Speed replaced ritual. People no longer wanted to build a home. They wanted to receive a home. But that doesn't erase what these houses represent. They remind us of a version of America that was slower, more patient, and more connected. A version where ownership was earned step by step, in sweat and sawdust, not just signed in a closing office. Sears homes stand as proof of an era when people believed progress required effort. Not shortcuts, they are the physical legacy of a cultural mindset that built an entire nation, one board at a time. Although there is no official national record of where every Sears house ended up, decades of research, interviews, archive digging, blueprint comparisons, and mortgage tracing have revealed clear density zones across America, places where these homes once appeared in large clusters, and where many of them still quietly survive today. One of the strongest concentrations is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This region was once an industrial powerhouse. Steel mills fired day and night, freight lines constantly moving through the valley, and those same rails that carried steel across the country were the very same rails that carried Sears homes. Over 1,000 verified Sears houses have been identified in and around Pittsburgh, some standing just blocks apart. These neighborhoods still whisper the memory of a working-class America that literally built their own shelter. Another major epicenter is Cincinnati, Ohio, with over 700 verified Sears kit homes. In certain parts of Cincinnati, walking down a street almost feels like walking through a Sears catalog in real life. Different models, different styles, all sharing the same origin, all ordered through the mail and built by real families during the same decades. Yonkers, New York holds over 100 surviving homes, and it is especially astonishing because land values there have shifted again and again over the past century. Yet somehow, pieces of this mail-order era remain firmly rooted, living artifacts that refuse to disappear even inside densely developed metro surroundings, and then across scattered parts of the Midwest and Northeast. You'll find small pockets of towns where only 20 or 30 Sears homes remain. Some areas have just a handful, hidden between newer construction, silently blending into neighborhoods that have forgotten how they began. These clusters are not just statistics. They are physical markers of how railroads shaped settlement, how industrial labor shaped families, and how a mail-order company shaped a chapter of American architecture without ever owning the land those homes were built on. Where a Sears house still stands, a fragment of American culture still breathes. What makes Sears homes continue to touch people today isn't simply nostalgia or architectural curiosity. It's the emotional weight behind what they represent. These houses remind us of a time when life had slower rhythm, deeper meaning, and when value was tied to participation, not just consumption. A Sears home wasn't a transaction you clicked on. It wasn't an instant delivery. It required labor, determination, patience, sweat. You didn't just receive your home, you earned it. And because of that, the bond between families and their homes was different. The home carried memory in every board and nail, because the people who lived inside it were the same people who physically placed it there. Today, in a world where everything is fast, outsourced, pre-assembled, subscription-based, one click next day, that idea feels foreign. That's why these houses emotionally linger. They are evidence of a time when people believed their personal effort could translate directly into the foundation beneath their feet. Sears homes are touching because they show the gap between two versions of America, the America that created versus the America that consumes. They remind us that ordinary people once felt empowered enough to literally raise their own future, beam by beam, without depending entirely on corporations, contractors, or complex infrastructure. These houses stand as quiet proof that a more patient, more collaborative, more hands-on nation once existed here. And when someone walks past one of these homes today, even if they don't know its origin, something about it still feels grounded, real, human. It is not the wood that makes Sears homes emotional. It is the story inside the wood. A story built by everyday Americans who believed they could build their lives with their own hands. Even though the Sears Modern Homes program ended generations ago, the story still leaves a mark, because it forces us to ask something uncomfortable about ourselves. Have we traded meaning for convenience? Have we moved so fast that we've forgotten the satisfaction of building something slowly, deliberately, with our own hands? When people built these homes, they didn't just gain walls and roofs. They gained pride. They gained a sense of ownership that no mortgage statement or real estate contract can reproduce today. Every board carried the fingerprints of effort. Every porch carried the memory of laughter. Every nail held not just wood, but a family's story. So now, maybe the real question is this. If you could choose, would you rather live in a house you built yourself, step by step, with the people you love? Or would you choose the ready-made convenience of moving into a house that someone else finished for you? There isn't a right or wrong answer, but your answer says a lot about how you see the world today. Type your thoughts in the comments, just a simple build or buy. Because somewhere, behind that single word, lies the kind of world you believe in.